Welcome back to Monday Reset, the program where we help you reframe your mindset for the week. So, continue on the conversation we've been having about mental health, right? We were speaking about anxiety and depression and bipolar and all those variations of emotional stress and uh, 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 health related issues that are labeled as mental health, right? And when I say labeled, I don't mean sorry, I don't mean in a negative way. And that is exactly what I wanted to talk about. Is the fact that there are two sides to that coin, right? In one side is very important and is very positive that we are creating awareness about mental health and about issues like depression and anxiety and uh, bipolar perhaps and stress related issues that are so preeminent in our day-to-day life, especially in this day and age with everything that we are going through. If it wasn't enough the normal stress of the day-to-day with this super rapid pace of life that we've been going from year to year, it seems like now that I turned 52, it seems like time goes faster and faster, right? But if you are a businessman or if you are a entrepreneur or if you are in any position of responsibility, be in a job perhaps where you have deadlines and you have accountability and you have things that you need to deal with on a day-to-day basis, it seems like stress has become part of our day-to-day life, right? And it's very interesting that when we talk about mental health, it's important to distinguish 2 points, and that's what I wanted to focus on today. One is the awareness that is being created to destigmatize the issue, to allow people to acknowledge that they need help and to tackle those issues with proper help without feeling victimized or victimized without feeling labeled in a negative way and without the stigma of and then I speak to anybody that grew up in a church environment, that old question, but you're a Christian, you shouldn't be having that issue. You shouldn't be struggling with depression. You shouldn't be struggling with anxiety, or you shouldn't be struggling with uh, HATT or bipolar. Why? I mean, we went through a period a couple of years back where my youngest son, that is now approaching high school time, but in his primary years in school, um, I had a couple of teachers that wanted to put him on HATT medication. And I fought that. And we went to a doctor, and the doctor cleared him out and said, no, he's just an active child. So that's the second side of that coin that I wanted to talk about it, is the fact that it is so easy because the theme now it's in the air, the thematic of mental health and those all those different issues that follow within that umbrella are being so front and center in conversations now. It's so easy to then take on that label or put that label on somebody rather than addressing the deeper issue. And let me clarify that. I realize I jumped around a little bit. So, one side of the coin is it's positive that today we can talk about things without the stigma, without the negative label, without making the person feel less in any way, or they're not worthy, or they're not perfect, that that person is somehow defective. So it's great that we can talk about the things nowadays without that problem. In the other hand, it's very important that we understand that because those things, those conversations, because those issues, those names are now being talked about it and being addressed in a mainstream way, it does not mean that it's escape for the real issue of emotional intelligence, of accountability, of maturity, of learning to deal with the stresses and learning to deal with the day-to-day life in a positive, correct way. In other words, the fact that I can go to the doctor and say, I'm struggling with this and I'm feeling depressed, or somebody is just emotionally broken somehow by circumstances, by trauma, by bad upbringing, it does not mean that we can just label that person, oh, that's a person with depression, or that's a person with chronic anxiety, or that's a HADD person or a child, or this is a bipolar person. The fact that when everything is fine and I behave well, and then when I'm under stress, I blow out on people and I start throwing tantrums. It's very easy to come and say, I'm bipolar. I spoke to my doctor. My doctor gave me some medication, and then now everybody has to treat me well because I'm bipolar. And now the companies are not allowed to take action against me, or my team is not allowed to label me. So I'm now protected by the label of this illness, of this mental illness. And again, I'm not bashing the issue. What I'm saying is, as a life coach, I want to stress to you that if you struggle with anything, let's talk about it. There is help to be given, there is processes to be undertaken, and there is solution that we can arrive to. There is healing. There is real healing that we can come into, right? But do not, and I mean do not, I want to stress that, do not take an issue that you are going through that is designed, and I repeat that, by design, it's made to strengthen you. It's made to test your limitations and grow you. Do not allow that circumstance, that issue, that challenge, that obstacle that you are facing to become your identity. Do not allow a label to be placed on you by a doctor, by a specialist, by whoever it is. Oh, but my doctor said this. Oh, my therapist said that. Or so and so, my friend, Dr. Google, said this. Don't just buy into somebody else's label for you. There's a very I love Les Brown and a couple of other speakers that really had a great influence in my life. And there's a talk from Les Brown that he describes an episode in his life where he was labeled mentally retarded on an educational level, that he could not cope in school as other kids could. And he took on this label. So one day by accident he walks into his twin brother's class, and his twin brother was the clever one. So he goes there just to deliver a note or something, and the teacher tells him to go to the board and answer a question. And he says, "No, sir, I can't." And the teacher said, "Why not?" "No, I don't belong to this class." I say, "Boy, just go and answer the question on the board." And he says, "No, sir, I can't. I'm mentally inadequate." And the doctor say, "What?" And then somebody scream, "Oh, he's a dumb twin." And he says, "Yes, sir. I'm mentally retarded on an educational level. I cannot cope with that level of problems." And the teacher said to him, Les Brown, his name, Les, don't ever let somebody's opinion of you to become your reality. Don't ever let somebody's opinion of you become your reality. And that's the point that I want to drive in today. We all have parents, right? Even if you were adopted, you had a parent. You were raised by somebody. So we all grew up in an environment where we were exposed to comments, to some derivative comments, some negative comments, some positive comments. Some of us had very negative childhoods. Some of us were blessed, perhaps, with good parents or good authority figures. But we all had to face challenges in life where our self-esteem or our sense of self-worth, of our sense of confidence was somewhere built, challenged, broken, rebuilt. For some people, it was never really rebuilt really well. And I wanna bring back that point that whatever words were said to you in your childhood, in your upbringing, there is one person that is the most important person that you will never stop listening to, and that's you. Your self-talk, the things you repeat to yourself. And I want to invite you today, I want to ask you, I want to really press with you this point. Don't allow other people's opinion of you to become your reality. You choose what you want to be. Your self-talk, the things you repeat to yourself, the things you tell yourself, those are the things that are forming your reality. Those are the things that are creating your filters for how you interact with the world, for how people respond to you. I remember reading in a book once, how people respond to you, it's in your hands, it's your responsibility. You tell people how to treat you. And I was like, no, that doesn't happen. If that would be the case, everybody would treat me nice. And as I continue reading that book, I started realizing, no, my behavior and the way I carry myself allows people to treat me in a certain way. It directs people in how they treat me. And I try for a time being more serious, being quieter. And funny enough, to some of those people I was in relationship with at work, in the work environment, they start saying, oh, you seem more mature, you seem more focused. Meanwhile, I wasn't becoming more mature. I was just perhaps speaking from a life coaching perspective, I was just more reserved, actually becoming inhibited, becoming closed up, not really allowing myself to be myself. So afterwards, I realized I wasn't learning how to deal with people in a way that generated more respect. I was just closing myself up. Then I had to learn how to be reserved in a way that preserved my identity, but confident enough to relate to those around me in a way that evoked their respect. But hey, that's the journey, right? That's why I went on to become a life coach, and I realized it's not an easy task. So I saw there was a lot of need out there and a lot of people that needed help with that. On the other hand, it seems like I'm using this expression a lot, in the other hand. So, in the other hand, I saw that there was a lot of people out there that don't deal with their issues. They don't take ownership over their emotions. They don't take ownership over how they relate to others. They don't take ownership over how they respond to situations. And then they just take on a label. So I knew this person that they would go and work themselves to death. And then when they were under that stress from the being overworked at work, they would just go and do all kind of crazy things in their personal life. And then when the consequences came, runs to the doctor prescribes medication, Now, that person is struggling with depression, chronic depression, needs medication. So then at work, they are excused, they're not performing now at the same level. Meanwhile, the personal life is in shambles, crumbling down because they cannot cope with putting all their focus on work where they feel that they are achieving something and completely neglecting the personal life, the family life, which is making them emotionally being broken. When I offered to work with that person and started addressing the issues, it came back to really learning how to work on that balance. Having accountability with their personal and family life, and learning to not pour all the energy and effort and focus at work as an escape from not dealing with the personal life. Which brings us to the point of accountability. Emotional intelligence, as we used to say a lot in the 90s, EQ, right? Your emotional coefficient of intelligence. It's nothing more than just maturity. And I can openly speak about that because I struggled a lot with emotional maturity. I was very good at my work. I grew professionally very fast to a point that I just couldn't cope emotionally with the pressures I was having. And by the mercy of God, I didn't get into drugs like other guys at work did. I didn't get into crazy lifestyle like other guys did. And believe me, I made a lot of mistakes. I did make a lot of mistakes. I went into just having casual relationships after casual relationships just as escape. And I went into drinking and I went into partying. And it led me to realize that the problem wasn't not knowing how to cope with the stress. The problem was that I wasn't emotionally strong to deal with that stress. Because the stresses that I was facing at work, other people went through them and became better professionals. The same stresses that I was facing at work that I wasn't coping with emotionally, other people went through it and they were now drug addicts. They were stealing from the company. They were fired. They went into all kind of wrong behaviors. Or they were, how do you call it, a functional addict. They were completely addicted to cocaine, and at work they were performing very well, but the moment they ring the card at the end of the shift, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And as fancy as it sounds in the movies, those guys are dead. Literally, they died. So, I want to continue. This is not a subject that we're going to cover today. We're going to continue that on next week's conversation. But if you get this can of worms that I'm opening here right now, is that there is freedom today to address issues in mental health. There is freedom today, and it's legal, it's mainstream, the conversation on depression, anxiety, hyperactivity that affects many adults. It's not just a thing for children. And bipolar and other kind of illnesses that are classified within the umbrella of mental health. So thank God there's freedom today to address those things without a stigma, to have that conversation without guilt and condemnation and without shame. But that being said, I want to continue the conversation next week on accountability and owning our growth, ownership over our growth process, and how those challenges and obstacles and difficulties, as hard as they may seem, they do not come to break you. They do not come to destroy you. They come to grow you. They come to make you stronger. Just like going to the gym, You don't build bigger muscles by just looking at the equipment. You have to have the consistency, the discipline, the pain in the muscles, the recovery of the muscles, the right nutrition to support the process. All that we're going to continue addressing in our next conversation. So stay with us and let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you have any experience in that area, if you know anyone that struggle with that. What is your view on mental health and owning your emotions? Accountability over your emotional growth. My name is Coach Paulo Mendes, and this is me for today. Cheers.